Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
It's okay. It's still pretty good.
Yeah. Alright. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Everyone, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid2. Joining me today is Milan Jeff 1992 and Steve _Baxi. There's an @ symbol in front of that, too.
Oh, how fancy.
Yeah, I know. So, Steve, this was your topic this week. What are we discussing this week on Geeky Gentlemen?
Alright, so today we're talking about disorders, disease, mostly mental stuff and psychological stuff, specifically in comic books. I'm not sure how much we'll get off on other topics, but I want to at least start with comic books. So essentially things like alcoholism and like PTSD and stuff like that represented in comic books, drug addiction, things like that.
Yeah, and like I feel like it's important to distinguish because a while back we did a video about mental illness, but there we were talking about like, you know, your more typical things like, you know, schizophrenia or multiple personality disorders, stuff like that, where it's stuff that you see used a lot more to create villains,
right,
and villains and psychopaths, and so we're not really touching on that, and I think we're going to even have to get into a little bit of like physical diseases too, because that tends to come up in comic books a lot as well. So I feel like that is something we should try to touch on. And
yeah, of course.
Also because I read a little bit on stuff like that. I read a couple issues of Sandman where that's a part of things. So I want to make sure we get to talk about it. Anyway, so I'll just start with my reading that I did for this. So I finally got around to reading Batman Venom, which had been on my list for a very long time. I read Birth of the Demon, which is Ra's al Ghul's origin story. And I read Agent Orange, which is the first introduction we get in the Green Lantern universe to Larfleeze, who's become a very popular character, kind of in the same vein as Deadpool, but in the DC universe, I'd say. I also read, like I said, 2 issues of Sandman, both of which had death in them. So, yeah, that was my research for this week. How about you, Steve? What have you been reading that got this in your head?
Oh, well, I've been keeping up with lots of Iron Man, so I've been reading Demon in a Bottle and essentially the whole first run of Michelini and Layton's Iron Man. I've been reading lots of Hellblazer. I actually just got to the point where John gets lung cancer, from all his years of smoking. So that's definitely going to be part of this. And then, like you did, I read Birth of the Demon. I actually have that new DC printing that's got like all 3 of the Birth, Bride of, and the other Demon stories all together. Which is actually a pretty cool collection if anyone hasn't read it yet, because you're getting like 3 trades for the price of 1.
I just like my version because it's like the extra big, like hand painted panels and stuff. It looks amazing.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. And then I read some Deadshot and Suicide Squad stuff because that's also about post traumatic stress stuff, and particularly with Deadshot being obsessed with a Big Brother complex.
Okay, and I'm sure Milan didn't do any research because he probably doesn't even know what the topic is. But Milan, can you think of anything you've read that kind of relates to this?
No, nothing. My father's been in the hospital. I've been kind of preoccupied with the shit. But,
well, I mean, just in general, anything where characters are, like, addicted or suffering from that kind of branch of mental illness.
Well, I've been watching the Daredevil Netflix show, and I guess he's blind, but he's, you know...
Apparently.
Yeah.
Like this big character thing?
Yeah, it's weird. Like, he can't see and stuff, and that's like... Yeah, he beats up a ninja and stuff. It's cool.
The episode where it finally feels like it's in the MCU.
Yeah, it's so strange because in that episode, it's like it looks like every single set from every single bad TV show ever, but they actually make it work with having it be bloody as fuck. But essentially, yeah, with characters like that, with characters that have psychological hang-ups or some sort of chemical dependency, it's a lot of fun. It's a certain thing that doesn't really marry well. In most cases, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, depending on the writer. Like, I'm not sure, I can't exactly think of an example here, but, like, do you guys know of any instances where, like, hey, let's make Superman a crack addict, where those type of things are used as more shock value than anything else?
The character. Yeah, I can't think of a specific off the top of my head, but I know it's happened where they just like decide to make this character so and so like this, just to kind of like bring him down because they think it'll make him more interesting. Actually, you know what? No, I can think of something. In Emerald Dawn, Part 1, the more recent version of Hal Jordan's origin before we got Secret Origin by Jeff Johns, they make him an alcoholic and he kills someone doesn't kill someone, paralyzes someone in a drunk driving accident. So yeah, where it's just they do it just to try to make him more interesting and edgy, and it just doesn't work.
They do that with Roy Harper when they first made him a drug addict, but in that instance it actually works pretty well, and it was the same sort of deal when Harry Osborn had that happen over in Spider-Man, but again, they make it work in that case as well.
Yeah, because with that stuff, they actually thought about the story. It wasn't just like a random, hey, let's fucking do a 90s and make, like, shock, like, just throw shock in there. Like he's a drug addict. Everyone's a drug addict now. It's a thing that used to happen like a lot in the early 2000s, where certain characters just kind of became sex obsessed or drug crazed, or like everyone was dying in horrible ways,
Oh,
it was strange.
They did that with Danny Ketch's Ghost Rider in this book called Ghost Rider Addict, where he apparently got some weird drug high situation off the Ghost Rider powers, and it was a really, really terrible series.
That actually does make me think of one thing that I kept coming back to is Speedy and Iron Man being, I think, the only major exceptions here. Most of the time when we have a character that's addicted to something in comic books, and I make this generalization fully prepared for someone to shoot me down, but most of the time it's a made-up substance, right?
Yeah, or sometimes it's just like, it's crack cocaine, but they call it like fucking. Basically, it's kind of like it's always, they don't want to use the actual name of the drug, so they just like, let's just call it snow. It's a sort of like, you know what it is, but it's a kind of a PG stand-in for the thing.
They don't do that anymore. Like, initially, because just Stan Lee didn't know about the names of drugs, really. He didn't have any, like, proper names for when he invented stuff for Harry Osborn, or any other of his side characters, but along the way, like when you get Roy Harper and you get Constantine and Iron Man and later stuff with Harry and a bunch of all these characters, like even Carol Danvers, who's an alcoholic, they do actually start giving them names and making it more proper because it makes it more relatable. The only thing with Constantine is the brand of cigarettes he buys are not a real brand, but even so, cigarettes are real. So
that's nothing. No, I thought about that, and like I get what you're saying, Steve, but I mean just more like the drugs and stuff that people tend to get hooked on. At least in a lot of the stuff I read, it's like a completely fictionalized substance. It's not like they just replaced the name of an existing drug. Like, Venom. It's a completely fictional substance. It kind of fills in for steroids, but it's way more sci-fi than that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so like that occurred to me, and like I said, I read Agent Orange because the orange light of avarice is like just, it takes complete control of you. There's a scene in that book where Hal Jordan gets a hold of the orange battery for like a whole 10 seconds. And all of a sudden, he just you see the thought balloons of the orange battery immediately infecting his mind. He's like, Hal, you want me. You love me. You think I'm beautiful. You deserve your own guardian. And you know what else you need? You need a hamburger. It just, like, immediately, like, just takes complete control over your mind, which is something I find really interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's just... And it's funny, I recently read the awful Larfleeze series, the 2 trades that came out from that, and I mean, it's so bad, but it's so tongue-in-cheek, and the writers just knew they were making something awful, so it was really fun to read. And, like, every so often, Larfleeze's ring would start talking to him again. He's like, but I thought you stopped talking to me. Yeah, well, I decided not to. And it's just like, it's this running commentary with his ring. But yeah, it's just, I feel like the drugs and stuff, or the addictive substances in comics, they tend to be more just ridiculously fictionalized. And I kind of like that about it, because I don't know, I feel like if you're going to do a metaphor for a character, go all out with it. I don't really need it to be a real substance some of the time. I feel like if you're going to go for a metaphor, make it fit in your universe and really just go balls to the wall with it.
And of course, the caveat to that is, if you're going to make up a substance, at least make the reaction believable or relatable. Because a lot of times you'll get stuff like, they'll do a depiction of a kid that's high in a comic, and it's completely counter to what being high is actually like.
Oh,
yeah.
How would Steve know that? Ooh.
Oh, yeah. But part of what I appreciate with, like, 70s comics, I'm really into 70s Marvel lately, is when they do stuff like alcoholism, it's absolutely genuine. Like, you get to this point in Demon in a Bottle where Tony Stark is so enamored with alcohol that he doesn't use it as an escape, he uses it for clarity. And they make a pretty big distinction of, he's always cleaning up his own messes, but there's a point where he starts blaming himself for messes that are completely beyond his control, and the only way for him to figure out a solution is by drinking something as he's working. And that's definitely a trait of alcoholism.
See, I
That
looked
seems
around
like
at my
such a
comic shop
fucking-
today. I looked around at my comic shop today for Demon in a Bottle, and they didn't have it. And I read a plot synopsis on Wikipedia, and, like, they didn't do it justice, because that scene alone makes it sound 10 times more interesting than they did.
Part of the problem is the trade that was
guys hear me?
released cuts it off, and because there's a
Yeah, we
whole,
hear
like, 3 or 4 issue setup before even the trade, and there's, like, a whole 3 or 4 issue epilogue after the trade.
Gotcha. What do you want to say, Milan?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you guys hear me? Because it's weird, like you... Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, yeah. Demon in a Bottle is one of those things that's just like... It's fucking... Who wrote that? Was it, like...
That was
his name?
David Michelini and Bob Layton. It was part of their first run on Iron Man.
Oh, yeah, that's right. All those fucking dudes back in the 70s, was it?
Yeah, it was in 78,
Everyone-
I think, when that story came out.
Everyone was fucking drunk in the 70s, you know? I appreciate that. It's one of those things where you use fictional characters and you kind of work out real world issues, and when it's done in an intelligent way, it makes for a good story. One of the I just remembered a character I wanted to bring up. It's not exactly an addiction, but it's more of like a hindering disease. Essentially, in the Thor comics, a spoiler warning, by the way, Carol Danvers, she got cancer, and she's the female Thor.
Okay.
But you mean Jane Foster?
No, that's it, Jane Foster, sorry. Jane Foster, yeah. She has cancer, and she's the female Thor, and, called it.
Called it? You called that she was going to get cancer and become female Thor?
No, she had cancer right beforehand, but I called that she was going to be female Thor. People were talking about it on the internet, and I'm like, haha, yeah.
Oh, cool. This video is going to get flagged for the Guardians of the Galaxy songs in the background. Nah, it's fine. There's an incidental use clause. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, too, of just, seems like cancer is kind of a good catch-all disease, not just for comic books, but if you just need to kill off a character, like, really create some drama, they have cancer.
Oh, definitely.
Because it's just such a wild card in life anymore, because it seems like everything causes it, so I feel like... I almost want to call it lazy writing at this point, because it's just like, oh, we need a reason for this character to be dying, but we don't want it to be, like, related to anything the hero did. We just want random chance. They got cancer.
Foggy
Like, no one
Nelson's
has the
got
balls to,
cancer,
like, give
Jane
him...
Foster's got cancer, John Constantine's got cancer.
Constantine might be the exception there, because, I mean, he kind of did it to himself on purpose.
This is true. He's
but,
been
like,
a chain smoker his whole life, so...
Yeah, I mean, like, Hal Jordan's mom, I'm pretty sure, died of cancer.
Oh, I didn't know that's cool.
Snap. Whoa, wasn't her
it's a
neck
really,
snapped by the
really...
Reverse Flash or something?
What?
Wasn't Flash Hal Jordan? Oh no, fuck. I keep getting mixed up. Fuck. I thought you said Flash instead of Hal Jordan.
No. Hal Jordan's mom dies of cancer. It's actually... It is used well. I'm not saying that it can't be used well. It just seems to be a nice catch-all. What happens is Hal joined the Air Force and his mom didn't want him to, and she said she'd never speak to him until he was out. And then she's in the hospital on her deathbed, and his brothers will not let him in the room to see her until he's out of the Air Force. So he goes and he tries to get himself kicked out, and it's just not working at first, so he throws a punch and knocks out his commanding officer, and that gets him dishonorably discharged. And so then he goes to see his mom, and he's too late, and she's died by the time he gets there. So that's, I mean, it's used incredibly well, but it is a real wild card thing where it's just like, shit, we need a way to kill off this character that's important, or make it seem dramatic or something. They have cancer. Like, let's see someone have the balls to give somebody AIDS. Just saying.
I can't even actually think of another comic book character that's got AIDS. It's usually just cancer or something of that vein.
The thing is, whenever they tried to discuss AIDS, they also tried to use it back in the day. They wanted to be, let's do AIDS. But the thing is like, oh, he got AIDS, he must be a homosexual.
And see, it's such a weird thing for me, growing up in the generation and going to the school that I did. I wasn't aware of the connection between, the apparent connection, which is completely fictional at this point, between homosexuality and AIDS.
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, you could just get AIDS if you had sex with too many people,
yep.
And one of the people you had sex with had... And that's the factual thing that happens, but I wasn't aware until high school that there's this perception that only gay people got AIDS.
Yep.
I was like, wait, what? Why would you think that?
Basically, think you can thank Reagan for that.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it's to be fair, it did start out most strongly in the homosexual community, so that there is some basis for that perception, I suppose. But in modern day, there's none at all. It is completely an unbiased killer at this point.
Yeah, you fuck one monkey, and all of a sudden you unleash a plague on your species. What the hell?
You want to know who to really blame?
Who?
The fucking Belgians. There we go.
There you go.
No, I'm dead fucking serious. Look at the practices the Belgians did in the Congo during the big colonial period, and it is directly responsible for the spread of AIDS.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Back in the, I guess they don't use AIDS anymore because, like, there were some characters back in the day who they tried to have those type of discussions, the same with alcoholism and drug use, but they thought, like, yeah, it wouldn't work if the character isn't gay, so they just made these ridiculously outlandish caricatures, and just said, yeah, he's gay, and he's got AIDS because he's gay, or something like that.
Yeah.
The 80s were a fun time.
Indeed. It's weird, because it's such a interesting plot device. I remember seeing this play, I think it was my freshman year of college. It was called Yellow Boat. It was about this kid who was a hemophiliac, and he got a bad blood transfusion and got AIDS that way. And that was just really interesting dynamic, and I don't know why you couldn't do more stuff like that. I mean,
what a
how
bitch,
many
too. I mean, like, that to happen, like,
no, it happened constantly in the 80s. It was such a problem.
Oh, God. Like, what a way to go, though. It's like...
Right?
I mean...
No, but, like, let me finish my goddamn sentence. With all that'd be a pretty good way to do it, especially in the 80s before you had all the checks and balances you do now, to just give a superhero, like a humanoid superhero, AIDS from the blood that they're getting donated when they get the shit kicked out of them in a fight. Why wasn't that something that was done?
it's still a bit of a touchy subject, I guess. People are more comfortable talking about cancer than they are with AIDS for some reason in fiction, and comic books are usually not the place that paves the way for those kinds of discussions. That usually happens in film or TV beforehand, and we haven't gotten a lot of that in film or TV yet either.
Fair enough. No, I just think that it's something that could be done, or I guess I just am looking for something else besides cancer to be, fatal thing.
If you want to find a good AIDS story, there's this play / miniseries set in New York. It's something to do with angels. I know I forget the name.
Okay, I thought you were about to say Rent, and I was about to say that's a piece of shit movie. I can't speak about the play, but if it's anything like the movie, it's a piece of shit.
Do you know Steve? You're an educated fellow. Do you know the name of this play?
Wait,
Angels
what film are you talking about?
No, it's basically
about angels and AIDS.
Yeah, it's this gay dude who's an atheist God comes down or an angel comes down and said, "Hey, you're a prophet," and shit. And it's
interesting.
Well, what is it? Fuck.
Let's.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Let's stick to comics.
Yeah, I'll check it out. It looks pretty good.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I just think I'd like something else besides cancer, just because cancer seems to be a catch-all at this point. It's getting to the point where it's a bit of a cliche.
How about Lou Gehrig's disease? Let's give.
Yeah.
You know.
Although, to your point, it is utilized really well, and for some reason, every time someone writes a character with cancer, they always seem to be able to write that character better than usual. Like, Foggy Nelson's not a character I particularly like, but when he got cancer, he became 10 times more interesting. And that sounds awful, but he did.
I could just imagine a bunch of, executives sitting around a table. It's like, shit, we need a way to sell more books and make characters more interesting. Let's give Foggy Nelson cancer. That'll work.
Then he fakes his death for the third time and shit, and that gets a little confusing, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
Everyone fucking fakes their death in Daredevil's universe. It's like, but they always come back to the same place. So it's just like, all the assassins and ninjas are that easily fooled in New York? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, Foggy's the only one that's done it, really.
Oh.
I cannot remember the name of the property I'm about to quote, but there's this fucking hilarious scene. This guy was like, wait, I thought you were dead. Yeah, I faked my death, but then the loan shark that I owe money to saw me at the mall, so, It's like, you go to the mall after you fake your death?
That's hilarious.
I mean, where else are you going to get a sandwich?
I guess. You couldn't, move or anything. Now that one cracked me up. Anyway, I can't remember what that's from off the top of my head. I feel bad. I feel like it's Tina Fey, though. I don't know.
Tina Fey. She's like...
Oh, I love Tina Fey.
Yeah. She's like a lady that is funny, which is cool.
Indeed. If they ever get around to this solo Wonder Woman movie, they should have Tina Fey play Etta Candy, just because.
You just know she's gonna fucking just... I hope she doesn't wear a fat suit, but a part of me wishes she does, just like this fat Tina Fey kicking the shit out of people with Wonder Woman. That'd be funny.
Is Etta Candy traditionally fat or something?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Most of the stuff I've read with Etta Candy, she's not fat.
Oh, she lost some weight, and shit.
It's whatever. No, I've never seen Etta Candy
back in the day, back in the 1940s, she was this squat, midget fat girl who's just like, let's fucking smack my butt, and let's go punch Nazis,
Okay, anyway. So back to the addiction thing, because I don't think we've gone far enough with that yet. I was talking about how I like to see when a character is addicted to something. I like it when it's total comic bookness and it just goes completely over the top, like comic books are good at doing, and makes it just a... Comics have this thing where they just completely exaggerate everything.
Nothing is gauche in comic books.
Yes, exactly. So I like to see when addiction does that, and you look at Ra's al Ghul, who's addicted to life at this point, and I think Birth of the Demon does a good job of capturing that, because he's just he sees death as like an enemy, and he's just so afraid of death and everything. And
Ra's al Ghul is Voldemort, essentially.
yeah, in a lot of ways he is, and so his need to keep drowning himself in these fucking pools of just acid and poison, as he describes it, is so fascinating to me. And it's very much like an addiction, because yes, he physically needs it to survive, but you know that there's a deeper psychological need than the physical need, right?
I mean, if you're gonna fucking, like, he's 600 years old, he's no, Vandal Savage, but still, it's, it's like, not everyone can get a hold of a radioactive meteor that prolongs their life forever. I mean, gosh, sometimes you actually have to give up a few things, a bit of sanity for a couple of extra decades, what's that between friends?
And they always play that with Ra's al Ghul as there are points where he's manipulative and a mastermind, he knows all, but then there are other points where he's just flat out insane. And sometimes it's difficult to even tell with him that is he enacting some sort of master plan, or has he just lost his mind? And a lot of times you get good scenes where he hops out of the Lazarus pit and you see him like writhing around in agony, and it forms a good basis for the psychology that you were talking about how he even manages to put himself in that boiling pit of acid just for a little bit of life, and it gets shorter and shorter as he does it, to the point where he only can use it for like a couple years before he gets old again, but he still does it no matter what.
Yeah, and that's always really interesting to me. And there's just this whole thing with Ra's al Ghul about the first, like, you see it so well played, and it's so subtle. I was just talking about how great they are at exaggerating, but there is subtlety. It's so subtly played, and mostly in the art of Ra's the first time he gets out of the Lazarus pit, and, he obviously goes mad for a second or two. And then he just seems even crazier and more bloodlusted than he was before he went into the pit. And we're talking about a guy who literally just led a genocide against his own people. And then he goes in the pit and comes back out and he's like, and now we're going to destroy our history too. And so it's just like, is he the same, or did the pit make him like even crazier? Is the madness truly temporary? That's something that's always interesting, and I think it is kind of a good commentary on the whole drug culture thing. Everyone goes, oh, it's just used to, with acid, oh, it just helps you expand your mind. Yeah, but how much is it affecting your ability to think rationally when you do stuff like that to your brain? Because it's all chemicals up there, right? So if you're introducing things to change up the chemicals, yes, I will agree you're to some extent or another expanding your mind, but how far can you go with that before you're doing permanent damage?
Well, the thing is with that, it all depends on the trip. I mean, I never had acid, to be honest, and I'm kind of scared to take some now because I'm like, yeah, my brain's been fucking widened, my perceptions have been spread too wide now, so I need to retract and focus. But, yeah, with that, it's just like, does Ross have any remorse when he does crazy shit like that? Like, when he's like, oh, we fucking killed everyone. Let's go into the pit. Oop. Oh, hey, everyone, let's fucking wipe our history away. Let's fucking, get rid of half of the population on the planet and fucking let the plants take over.
No, I think Roz has absolutely no remorse for anything human at all.
No, he just rationalizes it all away, and he acts like that's a good enough reason to sleep at night. But then you get certain stories where he's kind of tortured about it, kind of like the Constantine. He sees ghosts everywhere, and that's definitely interesting. So he forces it so deep down that he starts hallucinating about it.
It's strange.
One interesting thing is, I cannot remember the name of the issue, and this isn't entirely related, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But there was this one-shot comic I read. I think it was like a Halloween special or something, and it took place during that brief period where Ra's al Ghul was actually dead in the comics. And basically, Batman got a letter from Ra's that was to be received upon his death, and he's like, "So you've no doubt managed to finally close up all the Lazarus pits. You have my congratulations, detective, but there's a purpose to the pits that you were unaware of. and it basically causes a zombie apocalypse. That Batman closed all the Lazarus pits, so like the cycle of life and death was interrupted. So people like were rising from their graves and everything. So the only way Batman could solve it was to create a Lazarus pit, which gives the potential for Ra's to come back. But I love how he did it. He puts it in the Batcave.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's a great little one shot. I don't think they ever picked up on it, but it would have been a great thing to pick up on to bring Ra's back.
If Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul used that would have made it more interesting.
Definitely. That's like the one part of Morrison's run I really don't care for.
And to be fair, it's not entirely even part of his run. It's him and Paul Dini forcingly being joined together. Neither one of them wanted to do anything.
Yeah, I could tell. That's the one part of his run where it's got its moments, but yeah.
Yeah. Funny enough, the whole thing with Paul Dini and Grant Morrison, like I've been reading a lot of Heart of Hush. I've actually did like the whole Scarecrow scene into a motion comic. Check it out, you like it. But essentially, it's kind of weird. Back in the day, you have Grant Morrison and Paul Dini working hand in hand, and sure, trying to bring them together seemed like the next logical step, but I don't know. It's been a while since I read Resurrection, but from what I remember, I kind of like it.
It's got its moments. I just thought it was kind of weak overall. Like, the problem is Paul Dini and Morrison have very, very different takes on the whole Batman mythos. Yeah. Just everything that they see about those characters is it's both are valid, but they're very different takes. And that's all it really comes down to. Like,
in a lot of ways, it's like forcing someone like Dennis O'Neil to work with Frank Miller, and that would never work.
Yeah, like, the best way I can think to explain it is just look at the way they both write the Joker. Paul Dini's Joker, you can look at all over the animated series, is a guy that is essentially lying. Like, he doesn't actually believe the stuff he's saying. It's just an act to get away with the crimes and stuff. And so, like, whenever someone threatens his life or something, he gets legitimately afraid, so it's all an act. Whereas, Morrison's Joker laughs as he goes over cliffs kind of thing, because he's happy about it. So yeah, it's very, very wildly different takes, and both are completely valid, because there's, like, a whole history of both interpretations there, so... it's just one of those things where those two should never really work together, in my opinion. And what we got, I mean, they're both talented writers, so we got something that was passable, but it's not good. It's very problematic. But again, not entirely related. So anyway, I think Ra's al Ghul's a character that's incredibly addicted, and another one that it's been so weird. We've gone back to this so many times, or at least I have, since we reviewed it on the show. But Zatanna, her whole thing about being addicted to magic really jumped into my mind when Steve brought this up.
Oh yeah,
yeah. She's kind of
Seven Soldiers.
Yeah.
Like, she has that whole thing about, and I guess that kind of gets to the ultimate point of it, of like this line of thought for me is, how addictive would superpowers be?
I mean, people are willing to throw themselves into fucking toxic vats and shit, in the off chance that maybe they won't get radiation burns, but somehow turn into a giant fucking superhero or whatever. I mean, like, that's what that other story was about, like the Rocketeer story.
Yeah.
It was just, like, people would be doing that shit all the fucking time. Oh, is that a genetically engineered spider? Let me fucking put it in my mouth. You're a fucking idiot. What the fuck are you doing? It's a superhero universe.
The movie? Oh my god, what was the fucking movie where they had the, it had really shitty CGI, but they had, like, superpowers, kind of, where they could just make anything happen? You know what I'm talking about? That came out in, I think, like, 04 or 05, maybe? Maybe a little later. Shit, what the fuck was that called?
What's the plot?
Like, there are these kids that have these abilities to just do anything. Like, they can, it's basically like magic. They can just they make, like, cars disappear or something that they're in, or they can make things float or whatever, and they just have all this power. And they get it before they turn 18, and at that point there are absolutely no consequences of using the power. But if you use it after you turn 18, it starts to drain away from your life and starts to, like, age you super fast. So, like, at one point in the movie, you see this kid's father, and the kid's just about to turn 18, and the father is, like, I think they say he's like 47, and the dude looks like he's 200 years old.
That's
just, you know, like, yeah, like the power is just completely addictive to just use like crazy, and I mean, to get it that young would be insane. God, I cannot remember the name of the fucking movie.
Covenant? Is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
I actually, yeah, that's like the kind of.
It's not a good movie. It's got serious problems, but it's an amazing concept.
Apparently, it has a lot of abs in it, from what I remember.
Yes, there are abs. No, yeah, that's a great concept. Not a very good movie, but fantastic.
And it seems like every time that concept gets brought up, unless you're doing it subtly, it seems to not work. Like I mentioned earlier, the Danny Ketch addict stuff is horrible. And they tried to do something really similar in another Batman story where he's training a kid that's got superpowers. Like he gets him an accident, some sort of like toxic waste or whatever, it doesn't matter, it was just a conceit. And he gets like super strength and super speed, and Batman's trying to teach him how to use his powers, but he gets really, really addicted to them, and he starts using them to solve like really simple things like I'm gonna be late to school, so let me just super speed, or I don't want to take this test, let me just break my professor's leg so he doesn't have to come to school that day.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it gets kind of insane, and it sounds like a great idea, but it doesn't actually make any kind of sense by the end.
Yeah, it sucks. I hate when like a great idea gets spoiled by just bad writing.
You know what it is? I think it's just like if you are falling into a vat of toxic waste and you do get superpowers, I mean that's your entire biology rewritten. I mean, like at that point, hey, maybe I should break that dude's legs so I don't get an F on my test. That sounds completely logical.
Exactly. It's batshit crazy.
Yeah, but I kind of want to see that played with, just like. What if fucking some of these fucking, like, hey, I want to see Morrison do it. Just like, fucking Morrison should do everything always, forever.
Well, like, he did Zatanna, where she, like, she used her magic to try to solve her relationship problems, right? That was
like fantastic. A woman.
No, I mean, to be fair, anyone would do that.
I know, I'm just
if you had magical powers, you could just make anything happen, you would definitely try to get yourself a girlfriend.
Of course.
Buffy actually did the exact same thing, where, like, around season 6, when Willow got addicted to magic, she started trying to use that to, like, manipulate her friends and fix her relationship problems and make it seem like bad things didn't happen to people. And that was actually very well done.
Yeah, so no, I find that really interesting. And to contrast that, I mean, Larfleeze is a character that's incredibly addicted to his power because he doesn't really have anything else going for him before he gets the orange ring. I mean, he is essentially Gollum in space.
Pretty much, yeah. I was gonna make that point, but thanks for making it for me, Ian.
You're welcome. So no, like, but something I was trying to think of. And I'm sure that as soon as I say this, someone's going to go, well, what about this character, this character? Like, you guys are going to be able to rattle off a million characters. I'm trying to think of a character that has biological superpowers. And I guess what I mean by that is someone that has grown up with superpowers all their life and is addicted to them.
Barry's kids?
Really?
I think so. It's either Barry or Wally, or it's someone in the Flash family that's got kids and they were born with their superpowers, and one of them's got like super strength, one of them's got super speed, and they're both batshit crazy.
Okay, see,
like batshit crazy in a bad way, or batshit crazy in a good way?
Batshit crazy as in terrifying.
Terrifying.
Well, the question is, how much of that is just the kids, just the kids being kids?
Well, no, like, a lot of that's just they use their powers too much.
Gotcha. I'm just trying to think of like someone that's grown up though. Because, I mean, to be fair, they're kids. They're going to use them irresponsibly. Superman uses his powers irresponsibly as a kid from time to time. Say what you will about Superman being the man of upstanding morals, but... And say what you will about this being a bad show, but the scene in Smallville where Clark first gets X-ray vision, and what does he first do with it? Looks at the girl's bathroom. Every teenager would do that. I don't care if it's Superman. Like, there's a learning curve to being Superman. I truly believe this.
And Superman Earth 1 actually does that. And we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but in Earth 1 Volume 2, Superman loses his powers. and he's dealing with almost like a junkie who hasn't gotten his fix in a month while he's lying on the road trying to figure out what it's like to be vulnerable.
Interesting. Like, one of my favorite scenes in Superman scenes ever, hands down, is in Earth 1, where he, like, grabs it's some kind of device and it, like, shocks him and he goes, oh, so that's what pain is. I love that.
Yeah, Earth 1 is a fantastic series.
Anyway,
Yeah.
No, so I'm trying to think of, like, adult characters that have had superpowers all their life and feel like they're, and you could say they're addicted to that power, and I'm really having a hard time.
There's in the current Convergence stuff, they're essentially bringing back the pre-New 52 universes, and everyone's under a dome and they have no superpowers. And stuff.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But essentially, you have a real, like, when the shit gets real and they all get their powers back, some characters just kind of, like, it's really interesting to see how they're all, like, react to not being able to do the stuff that they're able to do. I mean, how awful would it be to just be able to fly, and then one day, nope, can't do that anymore? I mean, that would drive you insane. I mean, I could fucking fly. I spat in the face of fucking physics, and now I can't do that anymore. That's insane. That's not fair.
Ever lost her power? Oh wait, yes, she has. Dennis O'Neil made Wonder Woman lose her powers when he did his 70s or 80s run.
Yeah, and it was a terrible idea.
Yeah, but was that theme dealt with at all there? Because I don't remember off the top of my head now that we're thinking about it.
Wasn't
I never read it.
That, like essentially stick? Like a stick came out and fucking taught her shit? It wasn't stick, it was an Asian blind man, so that kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know, I never read it because everything I've heard says it's awful.
I know Manos really likes it, but I've never read it, so...
Well, I don't know, Gloria Steinem said, like, oh, he took away superpowers from the only superpowered woman in the DC universe, and I'm like, okay. Well, I actually bought this Wonder Woman documentary, and it's rather good. You know, visually it's pretty nice, and if you're a Wonder Woman fan, check it out. It's called. Let me see if I can find it. Where's my iPad, Mickey?
Anyway, yeah, I'm just like, so Steve, can you think of anyone that's like an adult and has had powers all their life and is, would you say, addicted to those powers?
It's hard to say, because almost every superhero I know gets them when they're older, or it's by accident, and it's always like a learning curve kind of story.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman's the big one because she was born with them, with the whole, whatever origin you go with, she's always born with her powers. But she doesn't really have an addiction to them.
Yeah, I mean, she handles herself very well.
Exactly. Superboy, maybe?
Maybe, but
he's a clone, so I'm not sure how much that
counts. And, like, he's, in a lot of ways, he's still a child, though.
Yeah.
So that's something interesting.
Yeah, he's only, like, a couple of days old.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm having a really hard time thinking of a character that's grown up with them and is still, like, just addicted to that level of power. Because I feel like in a lot of ways, power is a good substitute for high in a comic book. Because, Steve, you brought up how it's really imperative to use high properly, like to make a character that's getting high or drunk or whatever feel realistic. And I agree with that, but a better way I feel to do it is to use power, because that's instantly more it's not relatable. It's instantly more fascinating to me than someone trying to realistically portray being high.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Someone realistically trying to grapple with power.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it makes us root for them just a bit more, and it helps to both get sucked into the story and have like a nice healthy distance from it at the same time.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, I'm not sure how much something like this would per se count. But what about someone like Iron Man or Blue Beetle that gets to this point where their superpower is that they're really, really smart? Mm-hmm. And then they lose that. Because Tony Stark's got that whole thing in Matt Fraction's run where he loses his intelligence, and he slowly gets dumber and dumber and dumber until he loses all brain activity. And that becomes a bit of a crutch for him.
Interesting.
How does he resolve that, by the way?
Essentially, he reboots his brain. His head is literally a computer, and he literally jacks in wires in a USB and reboots his brain.
Oh, neat.
And he loses all his
Doesn't-
memories before Fractions run, so he has to catch up via news articles. So he gets to relive stuff like, oh, I did Civil War? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Doesn't Tony, like... This always seemed weird to me. Is modern Tony Stark in the comics, is his armor underneath his skin?
When Matt Fraction did it, yes. What it was is he had like a bunch of, he's got like implanted armor in his bone marrow, so when he needs to call it, it just comes out of his bone marrow on top of his skin and forms the armor, and that was the bleeding edge armor.
That's really weird to me. Like at that point,
nanotechnology. It's Warren Ellis.
At that point, he's more Darth Vader than Iron Man to me.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange, but I liked it in the story. Eventually, they got rid of it because Tony had the rationalization in the Marvel Now series that having a completely versatile in your bone armor is not as good as having a independently specialized armor.
Yeah, I mean,
which doesn't actually make the most sense, but whatever.
I suppose not, but I guess that we wanted to go like, yeah, he's becoming too futuristic and stuff. And
it's not too futuristic. It's just it's too much of a cyborg thing.
It's too smart. It's too smart, man.
No, it's not too smart. It's just it's not. It doesn't feel like Iron Man anymore.
I
At
disagree.
that point, it feels like a different character.
I disagree. It just
depends on how you use it, really.
I suppose so.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. But to me, it feels like it's verging on a new character.
I guess they just wanted to do a factory reset on the comics so people could like, oh wait, Iron Man's like a cyborg now, so just to get the new readership in.
Well, actually, it's interesting now that you say that it feels like it's a different character. He gets that armor after he reboots his brain and essentially becomes a different person, not having his past memories.
Interesting.
And then he loses it sometime after he's back to being, as we know him, Tony Stark. So maybe you're onto something there. I don't know. I'd have to go back and reread it.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things. Like, I just heard about that, and it just, like, to be fair, I haven't read it. Maybe it's good. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, the run is good.
No, I'm just saying
it's
that
Matt
particular
Fraction, what do you
story.
expect?
I haven't read it. I can't say one way or another. It just, when I heard about that, it just kind of, like, left a bad taste in my mouth. I'm like, that's fair. Sorry, no. That was my reaction to it, so I thought it was a really weird idea. Not saying it couldn't be done well. I mean, like, you know, if I'd not read New 52 Wonder Woman, you told me the Amazons fucking kill sailors, I'd be like, no, you can't do that. That's what?
Yeah, but they rape
but it works in the story.
I know. In the New 52, fucking the Amazons used to fucking go onto ships back in the old days, have sex with all the crew, get pregnant, and then kill everyone. Feminism! Yeah. Yay!
No, I mean, like, to be fair, I understand why people got pissed off about that, and this is a little bit of a divulges. Fuck it, you know what word I'm trying to say. To be fair, I understand why people got pissed off about that, but the story in itself, taken on its own, is good, and also, it's not like the Amazons were the only ones being picked on. At the same time, in the comic books, the Guardians were committing universal genocide. So,
yeah, those,
like...
Yeah.
You know, just saying, they didn't, like, it's not like the Amazons are the only ones whose character got changed with the New 52.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that.
Yeah.
No, but I just think that's interesting that we can't really pin down a character that's grown up with superpowers their whole life and and we can firmly say they're clearly addicted to them. It's always people that just get it, and I think there's something interesting within that.
Well, I guess you have to start from something a little bit more relatable. If you have a character who's just born being special, then average person reading will not be able to relate to that, I guess.
Maybe, but at the same time, I think there's something more to it. I think it says something about the nature of addiction itself. And what I mean by that is, to be addicted, you need a change in, like, let's just use brain chemistry. To get addicted to a substance, you need a substance that physically changes what's going on chemically in your brain, right? That's what creates the need for it once it's withdrawn from you. And that's how you measure addiction, is reaction of the body and the mind once the substance is withdrawn. So I think that says something interesting about the nature of addiction, is that in comic books, for a character to be addicted to power, they kind of need to not have that to begin with. Like, you have Superman and Wonder Woman and all these other characters lose their powers from time to time, but they're never, like, they're struggling with it, sure, but I don't think they really deal with it in the same way that someone who didn't have power to begin with got power and then lost it.
I don't know. I guess
the interesting thing from there is
time.
also that we want superheroes to keep their powers. So if we have a character like, say, the Hulk never deals with this in this way, but just imagine we got the Hulk who gets his powers, and at a point he becomes really addicted to them, and then he loses them. We as readers would want him to get the power back and to keep going with those stories, but they can't do that.
Oh,
so they either have to force the addiction and write the theme off, or give a resolution independent of the readership.
Dude,
and
there was a
to
story
do either is just to either perpetuate addiction or ignore addiction.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Milan.
Basically, there was a story arc that it's exactly like that. Essentially, the Hulk and Bruce Wayne got separated like into two.
Bruce Wayne.
I mean, Bruce Banner got separated into two different entities, and essentially the Hulk said like, "Go to hell, Banner. I'm gonna go away. I don't want you anymore." And essentially, Banner. Yeah, Jason Aaron. And essentially, Bruce was just like, "Holy shit, I'm free." Okay. Everyone else is a Hulk except me. I'm going to make giant Hulk monsters and try to recreate the experiment. I mean, like, and essentially the Hulk was kind of called back by S.H.I.E.L.D. was like, yeah, Banner's like making giant Hulk sharks and shit. Like essentially they have this
Someone should stop that guy.
yeah, essentially there's this whole, I love this part. Essentially, there's this whole agency in the American government that specifically deals with fucking evil scientists that have gone mad.
And it's run by the daughter of Doctor Doom, which is
no, it's not. It's not actually. She's not related to Doctor Doom, but
no, she is. She says in the first story I thought there's no relation, but then the second half of the story you find out that that's not true, and she's actually related to him.
But it was kind of funny when it was like no relation. You kind of thought like, fuck, what a horrible name to have. Like, oh, are you like Doctor? No, I'm not. But actually, yeah.
Dude, okay, I got to tell you about this. This is completely unrelated to anything you were just saying, except for the name thing. We had a guy come into work the other day to buy something, and his last name is Mankiller. His last name's fucking Mankiller. I told him he should just become a supervillain. I was like, what the? It has like the most ominous name ever, because like there's always been that theory that like you're named for what you did back in the day. So like if you were a baker, they'd call you Mr. Baker. If you were like a blacksmith, they'd call you Mr. Smith. Yada yada. So like, what the fuck did that guy's ancestors do? I just wanted to mention that real quick. Sorry.
About the matches. We're gonna run out of gliders and matches because of you.
Basically.
Stop it. Seriously.
Okay then. Thank you, Mickey. Anyway. Shit, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, we were talking about mad scientists and stuff. Mad scientists seem to be that's something interesting to talk about too. The addiction to science.
The addiction to science. Science.
Isn't that a thing though? Like you always see that with the mad scientist or whatever, where they're always trying to just pursue knowledge at all costs. It's like at that point, science just seems like an addiction as well. Like this quest for knowledge thing has become completely destructive. And I think that's present in Age of Ultron, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. It's also because you mentioned Ultron. That's Hank Pym's characterization to a T.
Yeah.
Have you read Rage of Ultron yet or no?
No, I don't. I'm not a big Marvel guy. And I think I've pinned down why while reading Batman Venom, because that felt very much like a Marvel story. I've never been a big Marvel guy, and I think the reason why is because most of their stories that I can think of, and obviously Steve's going to say something to completely contradict this, and that's fine. But most of their stories seem to revolve around the heroes making mistakes, and that's why the villains succeed. Whereas in DC, I find that when a villain succeeds, it's through virtue of being really, really fucking evil. Not because the hero made a mistake. And so I think that might be something that I've picked up on subconsciously.
Well, that's not wholly true.
I know it's not wholly true. It's just something I think I've noticed now. Because Batman Venom, I didn't particularly care for. It had some really good ideas that I liked, but it read very much like a Marvel story to me because it's all centered around a series of mistakes that Batman makes, which is very unique in a Batman book.
Well, that kind of stuff's only true for certain characters over at Marvel, like Hank Pym and Iron Man. Aside from that,
and Peter Parker, I think.
Yeah, and Peter Parker. But like aside from that, you get like bigger heroes like Captain America and Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel, the new one and the old one. And most of the other Avengers that are the opposite.
Well, like Thor to one extent or another at times.
Well, I mean, you could say that at times with everyone. Like Superman's got that at times.
Yeah, but I mean, like Thor's whole thing has started off with a mistake. If you just go by the movies alone, and Bruce Banner, obviously.
Well, you can't go by movies alone, though.
No, I'm just saying, just if you look at the movies, his whole origin's based off mistakes that he's made.
But his mistakes have nothing to do with Loki.
True. No, I'm just saying, like, I just find that interesting, that it seems to be a common thing in Marvel, and that's perfectly fine. I can see why people like it, but I think that's something I've picked up on that I don't enjoy.
Okay. Well, I mean, to your earlier point...
I think it's more prevalent in Marvel than it is in DC, but I mean, I could be wrong. It's just something I think I've picked up on.
Okay. And I mean, to your point earlier, though, when we were talking about the whole addiction to science thing, if you guys haven't read Rage of Ultron, you should definitely pick it up because it's brilliant. But essentially, it's a three-way conversation between Ultron, Vision, and Hank Pym. And Ultron is lecturing Hank Pym on the fact that Hank doesn't realize that he doesn't only have an addiction to science, but he's got this inherent resentment towards everyone that doesn't appreciate how smart he is. And Ultron keeps trying to make him understand that, and by the middle of the story, he says that you're not Ant-Man, I'm not Ultron, we are Ultron. And it's really fascinating, because Ultron at one point discovers that the reason he's so hateful of everything is because he's got Hank Pym's memories.
Interesting.
But yeah, that totally deals with not only the post-traumatic stress that Ant-Man's got from creating Ultron, so he's constantly trying to one-up himself and make himself better to kind of make up for creating Ultron, but he's also got this inferiority complex because he's a founding Avenger, and no one seems to treat him like he's Captain America, even though he's been on the team longer than Cap. And that really gets under his skin, and it shows when he creates Ultron. And he's got a subconscious desire to kill the Avengers, because Hank Pym's got a subconscious desire to kill the Avengers.
That's fascinating. But you see how it kind of leads into my point, though.
No, I mean, it does. But I mean, Hank Pym's one of those characters. Like, Thor and Captain America and characters in those veins don't really have that. Daredevil's mistakes have nothing to do with any of his villains at all.
Okay. No, fair enough. Like I said, it's just, I think it's a trend I've picked up on a lot.
I will grant you that Marvel characters make far more mistakes, and they're characterized by their mistakes. They're just not as related to the villains.
Fair enough. In any case, so you also, is there anything else we want to say about addiction? Because I do want to move on to PTSD, because I find that really interesting, too.
I think the only other thing I want to mention about addiction is it's interesting when we get stories that are about recovery and they have varying degrees of success. Like Captain Marvel's got that thing where she was addicted to alcohol and Tony Stark helped her get through it. And the most fascinating thing about that is you actually get a very realistic representation of what a sponsor relationship's like. And then you move over to something like John Constantine, and he gets cancer, and he's addicted to cigarettes, but he doesn't care. So no matter how many people try to help him, he just keeps smoking them. And both are completely valid and true responses to someone when they get bad news about one of their habits.
Yep.
Okay.
Just like, hey, you're eating tar.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you like something well enough, it doesn't matter how bad it is for you or how much someone tells you how bad it is. And then at other times, you can't tell that it's bad, and so that's why you have to change it.
Yeah. For me, I think I have a hard time really relating to characters that I'm supposed to sympathize with who have, one addiction or another. Like, I can see why people really enjoy that story, and it is good character stuff and stuff like that, but I have trouble relating to that because, I don't know, I don't think of course I'd say this if I were, but I don't think I've ever experienced any level, like even slight level of addiction to anything. So I don't think I have that in me. I just have, I don't drink and I don't smoke because I don't want to. I don't drink, smoke, do drugs, any of that because I just don't want to. I've just seen all the negativity of it growing up because, my father smoked and, I'm not going to get into the horror stories that all led to. My brother and his friends would come home in the middle of the night just drunk off their asses and just make complete asses of themselves, be ridiculously stupid, break shit, just really fucking embarrassing for the family. So I never had that interest in me because I'd only ever seen the after effects. I was too young to be able to experience the highs of it. So I was only ever exposed to the after effects, and that just always made it seem just uninteresting or just tasteless to me.
Although, interestingly, we are talking about substances, and there are other addictions. And I know you and I both love Grant Morrison's Batman, but Batman's got an addiction to mysteries and answers, and he's got a complex that he thinks everything is part of a puzzle, and it's not.
Except it turns out it is.
Except it is, but
funny enough, the question has that like
it's not as connected as he wants it to be, or he tries to force connections that aren't always there.
Yeah, the thing with the question and the Batman is like, well, depending on what depiction of the question, but the question has that same thing, but it's just way overdrive because Batman has people around him to tell him like, yeah, dude, calm the fuck down. There's no real connection there, but the question is like all by himself in his little room, like tapping away, like, yeah, fucking Illuminati and shit.
Well, it depends on, it's like you said, it depends on who you're reading, because if you read the Dennis O'Neil stuff, he's got Aristotle. Not the actual philosopher, but a guy named Aristotle.
Aristotle wrote her, his college professor, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is, because we kind of just brought that up with the science thing, but yeah, you can get addicted or because there's that fine line between feeling driven and being smart and just being completely addicted and wanting something to be there even though it's not.
Yeah. My experience with addiction, not really addiction, but at least I'm not going to go into specifics, but I've been a really clean kid. For the majority of my life, I've never did any kind of illegal drugs, never drank, never did anything. And it's only recently when I've been, when I'm in my early 20s that I really started experimenting with all this stuff. And I find it to be just, like, now I think I'm peaking now, and I'm not, like, I'm thinking a lot clearer, and I'm seeing that this is, like, it's not affecting me, like, in the same way anymore, because my body tends to do this. It always learns how to fight anything that I do. It might affect me for a little while, but it eventually, after a couple of days or weeks, it builds up a resistance to it. So it's just like, it's every time, like when I...
So you gotta do more!
Not exactly, no. I guess it depends on the potency, but there's a certain clarity. Like, there's this great Dostoevsky quote. I believe in God that... no, not me, but let me just... How's that quote go? God sends me a moment where I'm perfectly calm. And doing, what I do, it does that. Like, at the end of the high, at the end of the laughter and the wackiness, I kind of level out. And I kind of become this very rational, very... Like, I'm able to think clearly. And it's really strange. And when you see things from a very clear, very rational perspective, especially when you're somebody who, is clinically insane, it's really quite odd. It's one of those things like I'm not as crazy as I'd like to think, but it's like when you have that perfect clarity for that brief time, and you look at yourself, and you look at life, and you look at just your overall situation, and you have the opportunity to think about it in a logical way. Yeah, what is it?
Okay, no, I get where you're going with that, Milan.
Yeah.
It's an interesting line of thought. And yeah, I do agree. You can get addicted to anything.
Well, it's not really an addiction. It's kind of like once those levels of like clarity become so potent that it just kind of becomes your overall set, and it's like you're able to grasp that level of thinking without the usage of drugs, and you're just like that normally, and when you find that level in yourself and you learn how to reach it without the use of anything, illegal, it's a certain, like, some people say, yeah, drugs alter your mind. Yes, they do. They open up certain narrow pathways, and afterwards, if you learn how to access those pathways, those ways of thinking without the drug in question, it's really helpful. It helps you think about things in a certain way.
Let me take that point and connect it back to comics before we move on past addiction. And say with that, like, you get to a certain point with level of thinking where you don't need drugs. That's how I feel about the Joker. Brian Azzarello wrote Joker, the graphic novel, and I really don't like that story, and it really comes down to Joker drinking and taking pills for recreation. I just really don't like that, because in my mind he doesn't need it. Like, he'd only do that for fun, and he really wouldn't consider it that fun. In my mind, at least, in my view of the character. So I always found that really just, like, kind of invalidated the story even further for me. So yeah, I think that's a good way to connect it back to comics, though. So let's go ahead and move on to like Steve said, PTSD, and then we'll do physical disorders too. Because we've talked a little bit about both, but I want to get more into just the two individually. So characters with PTSD, obviously Batman.
Yeah, that's the easy one.
Daredevil, depending on your version.
Iron Man's got it. Captain America's got it.
Yeah.
Winter Soldier.
Hal Jordan does.
Hal Jordan, yeah.
Because he sees his dad die. I'm trying to think who else.
Superman had it for a little while, but then they wrote out of it after he came back from the dead.
Oh, okay, interesting.
What are you guys talking about again?
Characters with PTSD.
Oh yeah, well, Captain America, obviously, because he's from world. You know what's strange? It's like, for a brief time there in human history, at least American history, well, Western history, the whole world was going through PTSD after World War II and the most bloodiest conflicts in human history. I mean, that was just like a whole, like, we've never been that interconnected before in our history as a species. Like, beforehand, like, there used to be, like, pillagers and rapes and, like, monstrous murders every day before society, when we all lived in tribes and whatever. But now, where we got to see a large-scale version of that, in a Western sense, in a world globalized sense. I mean, for a brief time, like, we had a whole generation, several generations afterwards, of just PTSD people who were just like in this state of constant fucking war, this constant state of fucking. Nowadays, it's just like, it's like nobody gives a shit about war anymore. It's like, oh, there's always a fucking war. If you want to go to the Middle East and die for nothing, go ahead. But everyone's becoming a little bit more introspective now. Everything's becoming a little bit lighter. There's a certain, I don't know, there's a certain feeling in the air. Like, it's like things could really go two ways from here. Either we collectively as a species could actually achieve something worthwhile, or we can just delay for another couple of decades.
Well, that's kind of the whole point behind Star Trek, the whole ideology of Star Trek. And, with all the time travel shit that Star Trek does, I'd like to see someone have the balls, and this will never happen because all the Trekkies would just fucking blow their brains out. I would love to see someone have the balls in Star Trek to do a time travel story that goes to the future of Earth, and the utopia's in complete disarray. People are at world wars again. There's been just complete division of the countries, loss of unification, genocides happening again. I would love to see it, because like every fucking episode, at least in TOS. To be fair, I haven't seen stuff beyond TOS yet. But every episode of TOS, what happens is they fucking beam down, they see all this horrible shit going on, they prove that their way of peace and understanding and acceptance and moving on works, and it's the superior method, and it's always the right answer. And then the people either accept that or reject it, in which case they die, or they live happily ever after, or they'll improve themselves over time, and then they fuck off back to space and go visit the next planet. I would love to see them land on Earth where that philosophy has failed, and see the characters grapple with that. Because that would be fucking fascinating.
I mean, they do some of that in TNG, but they always come back to the fact that their utopia is the one that works, and so there's never really a reason to break that down.
Yeah, that's why I'd like it to be on Earth.
Yeah, but I mean, again, there's no real reason to break that down, because once you break it down, the only thing you can do is build it back up again and do the exact same thing. Because the point of Star Trek is that it's a utopia, and if you get rid of that, then there's really no Star Trek.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I think it would be interesting. Is I'd like to see the characters grapple with that.
Then you'd either have to end Star Trek, or you'd have to just bring it back to Utopia at the end as a contrivance.
Yeah, but I'd like to see if there's a third option that we're not thinking of.
I don't think there is, though, because that's the point of Star Trek. The point of Star Trek is that it's a Utopia.
That's why I'd like to see the characters grapple with it and figure out where to go from there. So, like, either do you build the utopia back up, but you've just proven that it doesn't work, that it eventually breaks down just like everything else. Is that the true nature of man? There's a lot of interesting questions there.
Yeah, they do those same questions without breaking down their own utopia.
No, I don't. To be fair, like I say, I only seen TOS. I'd have to experience some of the other stuff.
Okay, well, like TNG and DS9 deal with that, the exact questions you'd get from that without breaking down their own premise.
Maybe. I don't know. I think there'd be something intrinsically interesting of seeing Earth. But that's not really related to comics, so let's go ahead and move on to PTSD. So, like, what is the benefit of giving a character PTSD in comics?
Essentially, you have to... actually, it's a miniature version of the hero's journey. You have a hero who's psychologically damaged, and you just have to find a way for him to find that strength within himself to move on. And I guess it's like, that's the thing, superheroes are essentially the modern day myths, and it's like, everybody knows this, but it's like, it's almost like you have to give the characters certain real world problems to help people in the real world to get over those problems. Like, for example, if you have a friend who's going through that, and you have a really in-depth, very well-told story that deals with those particular topics, and you're not very good at just, helping out your friend because you're not much of a conversationalist, and you just want to give your friend a certain story that will help them, like, at least just, show them that, like, people understand what you're going through. People are there to help you. Like, this is a fictional character, but also, like, he is going through a similar thing that you are. And maybe that will help that person feel not so alone. And, I don't know.
Okay. Everyone, Milan's muting his mic every time he's not talking. And that's why you get random background noise, because Mickey's kind of an ass.
He most definitely is.
Yeah. So it does give your character motivation.
Playing Assassin's Creed all the time. You love Assassin's Creed, don't you, Mickey? Don't you, Mickey? Assassin's Creed.
Anyway, it gives your character a motivation, I'll give you that, but at a certain point, doesn't it kind of become like a ball and chain, where you're kind of waiting for the character to move on? Like, the joke is always, my parents are dead. And I mean, that's certainly fun to make fun of and stuff, but is Batman over his parents' death, or is he still just, like, dealing with the trauma of that, or is this his way of coping with it, or what's up?
Well, the thing with that is it all depends on the portrayal of the character. Like, the Grant Morrison Batman is very much over it, but the thing is, it's an intrinsic part of him. Like, everyone goes through certain things that is just a part of their psychological makeup. You are essentially what your experiences are. You are what you are, and, like, they are essentially, your experiences are the poles that you grow around. You know, like you are the root, and your experiences is the pole that you. It's kind of like tomatoes.
Life is like tomatoes. Hashtag Milan Jeffrey quotes.
No, but seriously, when I was a kid in Moscow, we used to grow tomatoes on the dacha, and they used to have these poles, and like the plants would grow around them, and that's the thing. It's a very simple fucking description, but since we live in cities,
It's good.
yeah.
Your reaction?
I could not hear anything. What'd you say?
What's your reaction to the idea of life being a tomato plant?
My reaction is potato.
Potato?
Yeah.
What if I say potato to you?
Well, then I'll just have to go with lettuce.
You're supposed to say potato.
Steve, we cannot be friends anymore. Lettuce is the enemy. It's the tool of the devil. I'm sorry.
I thought that was spinach.
Fucking Skype pictures the devil.
No, spinach is the tool of Cthulhu. You
No,
know.
spinach is the tool of Popeye.
Right. Good call.
Wouldn't that make Popeye Cthulhu?
Yes.
Oh my
Popeye
God.
is Cthulhu.
There's
Now
nothing
draw
wrong with
it. Make
Not
it
at
a
all.
thing. Anyway, so yeah, like, let's get serious for a second though. So, alright, so PTSD being this driving force and characters, you know, getting over it or not getting over it is an interesting thing, but like, what else does it really do to give a character PTSD?
Well, it depends not only on the interpretation of characters like Batman, but the character you're talking about. Like you've got this arc going in Daredevil where Matt Murdock is being forcibly removed from his PTSD, and that's a good exploration, but ultimately you're just going to come back to it. And that's because the trauma is inherent to the character.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was Daredevil before Frank Miller, but people will argue that that wasn't really Daredevil. There was Tony Stark before Michelini and Layton, but that wasn't really Tony Stark. So
basically, they were in their larval stages.
Yeah, and I mean, to give a character PTSD out of the blue, it only works for phases, but if the character is defined by their relationship to that disorder, then that's a very different question. And there's lots of those characters.
Yeah.
Batgirl's kind of an oddity, because she is and she isn't at the same time. But that's a different relationship, and we could make an entire video about whether or not Batgirl should remain Oracle or not.
Basically, a funny thing with that is that with the new current Batgirl run, with her living in Burnside, it's kind of sweet because you have Oracle, and it's essentially the character's become green again. She's not the early 30-something-year-old woman who's just been shot by a psychopath. She's a college girl now, and I guess it's in a certain way, in a certain shamanic kind of way. Basically, she gets the opportunity to be, essentially a Batgirl again, and in that way, just do all the silly things that college girls do, and
that's fine. But you can do that with Stephanie Brown, and you've done that with Cassandra Cain. I always thought that Barbara just functioned better and was more important in culture as a paralyzed hero that was invaluable to everyone else.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But the thing is just with what we have now, like if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we would have ice cream. But I guess it just.
But I'm allergic to nuts.
I get the point of the current stuff. I just don't see the point of making it Barbara. That has to be part of those stories.
I guess.
I agree.
Yeah, I guess.
To be fair, it's been good.
It has been good. It's just if you put Stephanie Brown in the same role, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Stephanie Brown's the only good thing Stephanie Brown has ever done is die.
Well, no. Have you read her Batgirl stuff?
I don't care. The only good thing that.
Have you read her dating Tim Drake?
No, I don't care because the only good thing she ever did was die.
Okay, make it Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain's an amazing character, and it's still not fundamentally change any of those stories.
I just dislike Stephanie Brown on principle.
What principle?
Just the principle, okay? I don't have a principle, just principle in general. The principle of principle, Steve.
It doesn't actually answer anything, but okay.
I know, I never liked the character, so I was happy when she died. I'm glad you're dead. I'm glad you're dead. One of the most horrible things I think I've ever seen in my entire life was someone took a clip of that from Batman 89 and posted it on YouTube like the day after Heath Ledger died, and it was just Jack Nicholson's reaction to Heath Ledger's death.
Oh, that's freaky.
It was one of the most horrible but like darkly hilarious things I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's just one of those things where it was so absurd and so dark that you had to laugh at it. It doesn't work when you describe it, but if you were there in 2008 when you first heard the news and then watched that clip, you'd understand.
That's fair.
In any case, alright, so PTSD, like, I'm not sure how much... What else did you want to talk about with the PTSD stuff, Steve?
Well, part of what I wanted to mention is just how it's utilized, because we talked about the characters that it's integral to, but also that being, there are certain characters where that's the arc. The arc is they get PTSD and they become over it, and then there are other characters where no matter what arc you're reading, that's always a subplot, no matter what. That's always inherent with their character, no matter what you're reading. And you get that a lot with Bucky after he's resurrected, and with Captain America after he's thawed from the ice.
Oh, yeah.
Where you'd be really hard-pressed to find a Captain America story post-1960 that doesn't have him in some way, shape, or form dealing with PTSD.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because he's a character that's supposed to be so perfect he can move on from it, but he never does. And it's so inherent that it's translated into the films. Like, no matter what movie Cap's in, he's always got some sort of PTSD. It's even there in Age of Ultron. And I have no doubt that it's going to be there in Civil War when that film comes out.
You know what that makes me think of? You watched Doctor Who, right? With David Tennant's run and stuff?
Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah.
Okay, you remember Captain Jack then.
Oh, I love Captain Jack.
Yeah, like, in his spin-off Torchwood, it's not a great show. It had a lot of problems, but I like the concept of trying to do a sci-fi show for adults.
Although in Season 1, it tried way too hard.
Oh, yeah, there's way too much... everyone that works for Torchwood is apparently bisexual and a whore. No, but, like, there's this one really good episode, and I think it's Season 1 or 2. It's got to be one of those two. Out of Time, I think it's called. Where, like, the concept was, you know, you have Torchwood dealing with this rift in time and space in Cardiff and all the shit that comes from that. And a plane from the 1950s flies through the rift in 1950 and comes out the other side in the late 2000s and lands. And they have no idea what they did. It just happened by accident. And so you have these people that have no way back to their own time, and they're each dealing with the modern world in very different ways. The pilot, who's a woman, you'd think, oh, now that she's in this, you know, feminized world, she'll be doing a lot better. People won't second guess her about having a career and stuff. But because of the skills of her trade at the time and how technology has advanced, she's not able to deal with it, and so she decides to try to go back through the rift, and even though everyone tells her it won't work, so she commits suicide. This college girl who is able to adjust to the feminized world because she hasn't really gotten a career yet, but is in love with, you know, the sexual freedom and everything. She goes off to college, basically. And then the most interesting thing is this older man who was a father and stuff and had, you know, a business and everything. And it's so damn tragic. He comes back and his son's 80 years old and in a mental institution. And that's the only family he has left. And so there's this really great scene because Captain Jack has been through a lot of the same stuff where, you know, he's been stuck on Earth for like 200 years now in the past. He has this really great scene where he's trying to kill himself and Jack doesn't want to let him and he stops him from doing it. And he goes, Jack, we can smile and hug it out and, go get a beer, and I'll say I won't do it, and I'll wait till you guys aren't watching me, and I'm going to do it again. Because I can't live in this world anymore. I can't be out of my time. And Jack cries and lets him kill himself because he knows that if he was able to, he'd do the same thing. And so it's just a really fascinating thing when you talk about the idea of being out of time and having that be like a sci-fi kind of, comic book way of implementing post-traumatic stress on a person.
See, I wish that show had more episodes like that, because that sounds amazing.
Oh, that is hands down its best episode. Watch Children of Earth. That's the second best episode, and that's like the 5-part episode. That is the entirety of Series 3.
Okay.
Are you guys talking about Torchwood?
Yeah.
It's so strange because that fucking show was on here in Australia completely with all. Yeah, I know, but all the sex shit was cut out of it.
Aw, that's too bad.
I know, but it sounds awesome.
What about an agency that finds intergalactic?
I know. Shut up, Mickey.
What does that do with sex? There's no.
I know that
there was never really any sex.
But there was in the British version.
Dude, Mickey. There was so much sex.
There was so much. They basically cut it down for Australian TV. In the British TV, I know they had so much fucking sex there. It was so fucking.
It was seriously like Grey's Anatomy meets Doctor Who. It was pretty fucking.
It's fucking awesome.
Especially for gay, you would have loved Torchwood.
Oh, shut up. But anyway, I don't know. I guess sometimes this is completely out of nowhere, but sometimes I feel like I look at this world through my eyes, and I'm like, it's made of physical matter, and that's fascinating.
Okay, whatever. Anyway,
So
yeah, I find it like I was saying with the addiction thing, I find it really interesting when instead of trying to do, I guess, quote unquote, realistic things that could happen to people, I find it interesting when comics just go over the top with it and go like sci-fi or fantasy with it and make it even more human.
That's the thing. That's where nothing is gauche in comic books. You can do that, like stuff that would look ridiculous on TV or movies. It's done through this over the top medium, but it's done with such a humanistic perspective. It's done with such sincerity that the innate craziness of the idea doesn't get swamped. It's just you understand it. It speaks.
Yeah, and it's just there's something great about exaggerating stuff like that, and I find it incredibly fascinating when we take things that are like super over the top, and somehow it's even more relatable to us than things that are actually happening to people.
Exactly. It's like the decompression theory of reality. It's like stories are essentially life, but with all the boring stuff taken out. And like life is incredibly entertaining and weird and crazy, but like it takes a long time for things to happen. It all depends on how you go about things, but life is a decompressed version of a comic book, which is weird.
Interesting.
Mickey's like, no, it's not. Metaphorically speaking, again, I don't literally mean that.
Okay.
It's like a comic. Life is strange. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm fucking saying. You fucking asshole.
All I'm asking is explain me how.
Okay, Milan, Mike. Anyway, so is there anything else with the PTSD, Steve?
No, I think we kind of covered that one.
Okay, and then I wanted to talk a bit about physical disease too. So we touched on the whole cancer thing, and this is where I wanted to bring up the 2 Sandman issues I read. And I think this is where it all kind of like culminates to. And I read the 2 issues with Death in Volume 1. The one where we first meet Death, her first introduction in the series, which is still one of the most beautiful comic books I've ever read. Like that scene where she takes the baby is one of the saddest but most like bittersweet things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've read that.
And then I also read the issue with the Metamorpho woman that Death helps to commit suicide.
Wow.
And like I should mention,
that's fucking sad.
right? I should mention I'm not an advocate for suicide. Generally
one would
speaking, I
think
don't
that
like
you
when things
are.
glorify. Generally speaking, I don't like when things glorify suicide. But I've just talked about two things where suicide was used very well. And I think the physical disease thing, to this point about exaggerating something, making something completely unrealistic that feels very humanistic and thus feels more real, is best exemplified in the Metamorpho story. Because she describes what is going on with her. And for those that don't know, I'll summarize. Metamorpho, you'll remember him from the Justice League cartoon show. It's the guy that's like 4 different colors, and he can change himself into any form of matter. And apparently that's like a thing that can happen to anybody that comes in contact with this mystical object, the Orb of Ra. And it happens to this woman who works for this random abstract company. And she's like so horrified at how she looks, and she finds herself so hideous, and she tells people that she has a skin disease, and she doesn't go out of her house except for this one time in the story where she does. And while she's in public, this mask she's wearing falls off, and people see her real face, and she's just completely traumatized by the event and runs home and has to break down her door to get back into her apartment because she was in such a hurry she left her keys behind. And Death comes in and says, "Hey, you okay?" Because this woman's like sobbing on her couch. "Are you okay? I saw the door was open and I heard you crying." And she sits down with Death, and they have this just this beautiful conversation about what it means to die, and how temporary life is and everything, and how even when everything seems at its worst, that it is worth preserving, because in the end everything does die anyway, so why not just experience it anyway? And in the end she out-argues Death and says, "No, please, I do want to die. I want to die, I want to die, I want to die." And Death helps her find the way to do so. And it's just, I find so much fascinating in that, because there's all these levels of euthanasia within that story, and that's a big thing that comes up when we talk about disease, and I don't think that's something that's stressed in comic books nearly enough.
It's interesting with these type of monster-like heroes, with like the Thing and Metamorpho and whatever, and Lady Metamorpho. You don't really get that explored a lot. I guess it depends on the psychological makeup of the character in question. I mean, like, you have the kind of, I'm sad that I'm essentially a giant rock monster thing with with the Thing in a Fantastic Four, but he's from New York. He knows how to deal with it.
New Yorkers go through that shit all the time.
Exactly. It's fucking...
I'm gonna call Bill. He's gonna be like, I got like 5 friends who turned into rock monsters. Just show up for work.
I mean, that's the thing. That's why Daredevil hasn't fucking killed himself. He's from New York. New Yorkers are made from tougher stuff, man. It's just like...
I did love the line in Daredevil where she's like, "And you can take incredible amounts of pain." Oh, that part's because I was raised Catholic. That was a great line.
It's so awesome that we can we can so easily go from Sandman and suicide and shit, and then fucking Catholics, right?
Right. No, but like I think there are a lot of there are a lot of levels of euthanasia and dealing with disease and stuff. And I mean, I don't want to get too much into this, but for anyone that's ever been with someone that's going through that or had a disease themselves, even if it's a minor thing, even if it can be treated and taken care of, those kind of thoughts do cross your mind where it's like, is there even any point to being around anymore if I have to deal with this? And if it's a loved one, it's like, should they even have to be going through this just so they can see me, or just so that they can stick around for seemingly no reason, because it's all horribly downhill from here. So that's always a really interesting thing, and I don't think it's dealt with in comic books enough. Often the character that has some kind of horrible disease either ends up being cured, which I feel cheapens it, or they just kind of always have it and it never really goes anywhere. Okay, nice quietness. No reactions. Steve, react.
Reacting. Okay, no, yeah, no, you're right, and it's part of the problem of the comic book medium in general is that, if you write for the big two, you can't really have an ending to anything. So you can say you can introduce a character that starts from a place like that, or a character that ends on a place like that, but it's bound to be undone. And then you move over to stuff in like Image and IDW and Dark Horse, and they play around with that a little bit more, not by much, but a little bit more. If you read stuff like The Crow, you find that no matter how objective you try to be or how much you try to sort of edit your words out, you can put so much emotion on a page that the story's a bit incoherent.
My dad take a shower, so I might be off for a bit.
Okay.
You get to a point where the emotion makes the story incoherent, and I guess it might just be harder to do on paper than it is to do on film, or it is to do on television. Because there's there's Breaking Bad that deals with that in the long term. There's 50/50 that Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie that deals with that, and those are both very good. But those are hard to do in comic books.
Well, I mean, like the example that touched me more than anything else is that Sandman thing. But yeah, I'd agree. To be fair, Neil Gaiman's a fucking genius.
Of course.
No, but I do agree. It's probably a harder thing to translate, especially if you have, like, you know, the biggest sin about comic books, the thing that I think keeps people really from accepting them as true literature is the status quo. It always has to go back to status quo in comic books, and that is a real problem that I think at times does prevent them from jumping over that hurdle to truly be considered literature.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the story with death, and I mean, that's something I've seen in Joss Whedon's Angel a lot, and that's why that's my favorite television show of all time, because it deals with that in the most pure way I've ever seen it, but that it doesn't play the same way on a comic book page, unless you just make that one season into like a 26-issue ongoing series or something, and then cap it off somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that just doesn't happen.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's such a hard topic to wrestle with, because, I mean, people are just naturally afraid of death. And I think that's where all of these kind of lead to, you know. Yeah. What is addiction? It's an escape from life, because you don't want to have to deal with like we talked about with Ra's al Ghul, you don't want to have to deal with death, so you escape from life. That's why Ra's al Ghul is kind of like the perfect symbol of an addict in a lot of ways, because for him it is the ultimate escape from reality. And what is PTSD? Dealing with the shock of just how inevitable it can be, right?
Right. Yeah, no, you're right.
And what is disease but just, you know, when it's true proper disease, what is it but just death waiting for you down the line?
And it's also one of the only ways that, like, reading stories like you're talking about, it's one of the only ways that people can stop saying things like, everyone dies, and start saying things, or at least subconsciously thinking things like, someday I'm going to die. And those are two very different points to make. One's far more personal than the other.
One of my favorite moments in philosophy class was the Heidegger class I took. The first day of class, the professor goes, "You're all going to die. You know that, right?" And I just, being the smart ass I am, go, "Wait, what?"
That wasn't part of the contract.
Wait, I'm not aware of this. And like, I mean, just a couple days ago, I was talking with my mom and stuff, and she goes, "Yeah, we all have to go sometime." I'm like, "I'm not gonna." "No, you're gonna live forever?" "Yeah, that's the plan." "Oh, good plan."
I love that Sandman has a story about a guy that literally does that.
Oh, I mean, that's that's my favorite issue of Sandman, actually.
It's a really good story.
Yeah, it's so sweet. Because, like, you so expect that guy to, like, get some kind of poetic justice comeuppance and stuff, and you're like, no, it's just a cool dude. Just guy in the right place, right time, nice enough. Yep, nice stuff.
Yep, Neil Gaiman is, like, best human.
Neil Gaiman. Haha, Gaiman.
Shut the fuck up, Mickey! Don't you make fun of Neil Gaiman, bitch!
That joke was so absolutely middle school, it kind of broke my brain.
I know.
Right.
My little brother is
Like,
18
geez,
years old.
wow. Who
I
says
know.
that?
My little brother, apparently.
Fucking what?
Anyway, no, but like Neil Gaiman is a fantastic writer. I've got all of Sandman now. I've got my 2 Absolute editions, and I've got the let's see here, if I can read it from over here, 4 or 5 other trades that came out with the recoloring. I'm missing 1 issue in all of that. God damn it! Fucking ways they collect things.
It's really annoying, yeah.
So I've got to go out and buy 1 issue of Sandman. I'm gonna have all of Sandman, and that's going to be some of my reading I'm going to be doing. So I'm just expecting by the end of the summer to just be crying at least once or twice a day, just from either reading Sandman or thinking about Sandman. But yeah, like I do think that everything we've talked about tonight is just in one way or another a reaction to death. And to be fair, you could make the argument that everything we do is a reaction to death. And I mean, it goes back to that Cake song with the line that I really like. As soon as you're born, you start dying. Like, yeah. It's not a nice way to look at it, but yeah.
It's a way to look at it, but maybe not the best way.
My little brother is just fucking so mad at you guys, man. I just told him what you said, Steve, and he's just yammering on about how indignant he is.
Look how old you got.
No, but like I just think that's a really interesting way to look at things. Is just people are constantly afraid of and reacting to death, and that's what Death's first issue is about. Is just people completely misunderstand her.
Yeah.
Yes, I used that word correctly. Okay.
That makes sense. And Death's the thing in the Marvel comics as well, and that's the personification of that is a little bit less subtle in the way Neil Gaiman does it, but it's about the same kind of the idea that someone can die, no matter how much power you have, is enough to drive people insane.
Yeah.
You know what Thanos is? Like, funny enough is...
We've done this. I know exactly what you're going to say. We've gone through this.
But you were talking about the fucking the Joker story that you hate so many times. I can repeat myself as well.
Steven's an asshole.
Yeah, but essentially...
Steve's an asshole.
No, he's not, actually. He's rather nice. But,
he's an asshole. Make him depressed.
Shut up, Mickey! Thanos is like a fucking teenage boy. He's like an emo boy who's just...
You already said it to your friends that he's all
Shut the fuck up, Mickey!
But you already told him this about Thanos.
I know, he's a fucking goth kid.
The same shit?
Okay, mute your mic, because it's not getting anything done.
Say constantly the same shit over and over in different contexts? Basically, yeah.
Okay, anyway, see, like, I keep trying to make this point, and I keep just repeating myself, and that's really annoying. No, but I do think it's all reaction to death, and that's what you see in her first issue is it's just a description of what death is and how people don't truly understand her. There's no malice in it. It's just a thing. She just is there to do her job, and people are so afraid of her, and really you shouldn't be. It's just part of life. That's all you've got, and that's all you get, and how you choose to react to that is how you choose to react to that. But
have you ever read
at the end of the day, you're still going to die, and that's something I find fascinating.
Have you ever read any of the Mike Carey Lucifer stuff?
No.
Okay, because that's essentially the same sort of thing. Of Lucifer was just doing his job, and everything else is just a very human, very insane reaction to inevitabilities. So when he ultimately quits in Sandman and just decides to live in the world as one of them, he gets a much deeper understanding of how powerful a fear of either eternal damnation or death can actually be. And it sort of becomes a motivating force for him.
Yeah.
It's
I see a lot of
girls
girls reading
I doubt the TV show will have those kinds of themes there, but if you haven't read it, the comics are incredible.
What TV show is he in?
They're making a Lucifer TV show based on the Mike Carey comics, but he's originally a character that spun out of Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
Okay. Now I quit about halfway through Volume 2 of Sandman when I was originally planning to read the whole thing just because fucking college. Gotta read fucking Heidegger and goddamn swamp paper.
Yeah, Sandman is like, that's the thing about Sandman. It's really great stuff, but there's just so fucking much of it.
Right?
Yeah.
There's so much good stuff that I get to read now. Yay!
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's about the end of the topic, though, wouldn't you say so?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. Shit, I forgot to tell Milan that it's his topic choice. We need a review, Milan.
My father's kind of calling me, so I don't really have a topic. God damn it. On the mat.
Steve and I can bullshit for a sec while you think of something.
Cool.
So yeah, that's the end of the show. So Steve, you know what, we're gonna start doing rants. Fuck it, we're just gonna straight
steal
up
the GNN thing. Okay.
yeah, we're just gonna straight up steal it. Like that was originally the premise of the show. Is this was just gonna be GNN but longer and with cussing.
I'm okay with this.
Yeah, that was my joke. When we first started, it was just GNN but longer and with cussing. So yeah, what's a good thing to rant about, Steve? You go first.
So I can't believe I'm doing this. We're actually doing a rant. Okay. I hate that when you get computers or laptops or any sort of hardware out of a box, the factory cables you get come of two sizes. Too fucking long and too fucking short. There's nothing in between. You either get a wire that does nothing for you because it can't reach anything past 2 inches, or you get a wire that's so long you might as well just strap it down or cut it off and shorten it yourself. And that's really annoying. I was hooking up a computer today and I had both of those situations at the same time, and it's very irritating because you essentially have to take up all the extra space you would have had with long wires, or you have to completely restructure the area you're in to accommodate for tiny wires. There's no universal size for wires, apparently.
Well, there are. Oh, shit, I forgot to go buy my goddamn... I feel bad now. I made that guy order me a cable, and I completely forgot about him. Oops. I said I'd be in the next day, and I wasn't. I feel like a dick. It's cool. I'll go in tomorrow. In any case... Yeah, I agree. That shit's annoying. I think there are standard cable sizes, but there needs to be more standardization to it of this is the cables you will be getting.
I mean, I'm sure there's a standard size, but there are not companies that acknowledge it.
Yeah. Like, all power cables that come new in box are going to be exactly 7 foot long unless you order longer.
Yeah.
All USB cables, unless you order longer or shorter, are going to be 3 foot. Yeah. I agree.
So,
got a topic yet?
Nope.
Think of something. We're doing rants right now.
Fuck.
Well, me and Mike can think of shit. You got fucking the world ending over there. Okay, what am I gonna rant about? I'm gonna rant about Netflix not having any way to, like, just keep their shit consistent. This is something that's been driving me crazy. I've tried to watch through all of Star Trek, and so I got through all of TOS just fine. I got through all of the movies up to Star Trek 4 just fine, and I watched Star Trek 4, and no problem. And then they didn't have Star Trek 5. I was like, shit, I'm gonna have to go buy Star Trek 5. I really do not want to buy Star Trek 5, because I know that movie has a reputation. That is not something I want to have to buy.
The one movie you get to buy is Star Trek 5. That's hilarious.
Yeah, but no, I didn't have to because they ended up posting it. What was so annoying is they had Star Trek 1 through 4, they didn't have Star Trek 5, and then they had Star Trek 6. The fuck? So, like, I find that really annoying. I'm like, okay, fine, I guess I'll keep an eye out for Star Trek 5, and I'll buy that, thanks. And I had been looking for it for a couple weeks, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And then, lo and behold, it just suddenly appeared on Netflix. I'm like, oh, perfect, there we go, I'll watch Star Trek 5 now. And so I didn't. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I'm certainly glad I didn't buy it.
It's not great, but it exists, and it's a thing in the universe, so...
There's scenes I like, I'll give it that much. It gets the characters well, that's the good thing. So yeah, so I was happy I didn't have to buy Star Trek 5, and today I look on Netflix because I got some free time to kill before I had to go into my second job today, and I'm looking on Netflix, I'm like, alright, let's sit down and finally watch Star Trek 6 and finish all of TOS. And you know what, Steve? Star Trek 5's still on there. Star Trek 6 isn't on there anymore.
Wait about a month, and I'm sure they'll switch out.
That's so fucking annoying. It's just like there needs to be this like standardization, or they need to let you know things are going away.
Well, the funny thing is, they never lose the license. They just arbitrarily cut Star Trek.
Well, not just Star Trek alone. Just like there's constantly things like, oh yeah, that was on Netflix. Like I remember a while back.
Have we
did Planet
discussed
of the Apes.
transhumanism before?
That's a topic we need to review.
The Jack Kirby New Gods.
That's a lot to read.
That's like
The first volume, then. The first volume.
Is that even doable?
Yeah.
I'd have to track it down, because I'm not sure if the omnibus is still in print, but...
I mean, arg, matey. No, just like Netflix really needs to like let you know that stuff's going away, because like they build themselves as the replacement of the video store, but like, you know, there's no video store in the, you know, in their heyday in the 90s that I could walk into and not find the Planet of the Apes. And Netflix at one point had the Planet of the Apes, the first film, and then they didn't for a while, and then they had again, and they didn't for a while. I'm like, that's fucking aggravating. I
say give it like maybe 5-10 years, and that won't be a problem anymore. But as of right now, it is really fucking annoying. Because they had Mad Max, and then they just left it right before the movie came out, and that doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, they probably were told to pull it. I'm like, that's really fucking aggravating.
It is. It's really aggravating. I had to track down all the DVDs so I could watch them all.
Like I get that they're probably like, okay, well, we can't afford it at this point. I'm like, yeah, well, you know, I'm sure you can if you really put your money into it. Like I hear they're losing the BBC stuff. That might have changed, but I hear they're losing all their BBC properties. I'm like, you should really be fighting harder to keep that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, unless BBC is straight up sending you cease and desist, if they're asking to be paid more, you should really be fighting harder to keep that stuff.
So, are we done that yet? Or?
We're doing rants. Do you have something you want to rant about?
No. I just want to say, I wanted to give the whole end thing so I can go and hang out with my dad.
Okay. Everyone, thank you for listening. Until next time. This has been us stealing rants. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I'm the politician.
And I am the madman.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Alright, sorry guys.